Hello and welcome to the BCU Alumni podcast. I'm Bethan from BCU's alumni team, and in each episode we welcome a different member of our alumni community back onto campus to find out what they've been doing since they graduated from BCU. Today we're joined by Luke Perry, a fine art graduate and previous Alumni of the Year who has had a truly incredible career as an industrial artist and sculptor. After graduating 20 years ago, Luke became the director of Industrial Heritage Stronghold, which is a non-profit organisation which builds public artworks which aim to celebrate the character, diversity and the heritage of communities. Luke's work shines a light on subjects that have been long uncelebrated to bring equal representation to public art. His projects across the Midlands and wider UK include the Lady Chainmakers Monument in the Black Country, the Ribbons as part of Birmingham AIDS and HIV Memorial, and Forward Together in Birmingham City Centre, which celebrated the region's diversity and spirit. His work stands for equality and civic pride, and Luke's main ambition is to bring an understanding of our history, a respect for our present, and most importantly, who we really are. In this episode, we will be exploring how public art can change the face of towns and cities and give a voice to communities, as well as discover more about Luke's journey so far and his favourite projects. Luke, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here today. You've actually just come from the School of Art for your photo shoot where you studied, so what was it like to be back on campus where it all began for you?
Well, I think it's also one of my favourite buildings in the world. It's an incredible space. It's built for light, it's built for people, and it was built at a point where architecture had sort of no bounds of budget. The Victorians knew how to build a building. They didn't know how to keep people happy in a sort of domestic or global sense, but they were very good at architecture. So it's a wonderful place for that. And also, I mean, I'm quite familiar with it because I go back every once in a while. I go and, big shout out to the Fine Art exhibition.
Yeah.
And Kane and Brown, who I mentored, has just done his exhibition there. So
Yeah.
I'm never far away.
So, as a Black Country girl, I actually came across your work long before I joined BCU thanks to your Lady Chainmakers Monument in Crater Heath. Your family runs a chain and rigging manufacturing company which has been in operation for over 100 years and is actually one of the last remaining factories of its kind. So was this what led you to study fine art then?
I think I studied fine art because making things is just in my blood, maybe, if you believe in that kind of thing. It's certainly something I can't not do. And my family, who are very wonderful, they encouraged me to do what I wanted to do, which is wonderful. What a privilege, And my whole family, even the chainmakers, and my nan, who was an upholsterer, and she worked with her hands as well. I think they always aspired to be artistic people, but they just didn't have that luxury of doing it as a job. So when I kind of had a leaning towards art, they just pushed and pushed and pushed. But in a nice way. So kind of that was probably it. And I think sculpture I'm drawn to because it's three-dimensional, and it's something you do with your hands and something you can appreciate with your hands. And growing up as part of a making family, that's just the dominant thing. If you're a gardener, if you're a cook, if you're a carpenter, if you make dresses, it's all something that you create with these tools that we're lucky enough to give with thumbs and fingers. And so that was the natural draw, I suppose.
Okay, so obviously I just spoke about the Lady Chainmakers. And even now it is still a piece of art that the local area just adores. I mean, so many people, obviously including my own family, were just delighted when you were able to give a voice to a group of women who did change history. So your work obviously means so much to people all over the UK, but at what point was it that you thought, I want to do that, like I want to be a public artist? I
think almost when I just realised it was possible. I think I've always loved public art because it is what makes a space for me. That as well as the people that shape it. And I feel like when I lived in London, briefly, I did that thing where I thought, I'm an artist, I've got to go and work in London because that's what you do.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is a complete fallacy. That's not the case at all. But when I was there, my family were... my granddad got really ill, and he was the sort of... because he was never that well, because he was a chain maker, worked in the metal industry. No one's well in the metal industry, really. You're never firing at 100%. The eyes were always on him to see when he was going to recover or not recover or whatever. And there was a point where he was essentially dying, and I thought, why is there nothing that looks like him in my area? You know, there's these sculptures to these rich old white guys that owned the factories that he worked in, but why is there nothing about the people that made the area? And I remember I wrote to the council and said, like, I want to make a sculpture. And of course, I had no idea what I was doing, or getting myself into. And they said, well, apply for something. God, imagine that. This is back in a different government. And so I applied for a commission, and I got it, which was, up until quite recently, the highest budget I'd ever had, because that was pre-2007. And a lot of stuff's gone on since then. But yeah, so that was I suppose, when I first realised that it was possible to make public art as a job. It's certainly not an easy job if you do it for the right reasons. But I'm completely in love with my career, which is an incredible bit of luck to have.
So where is the sculpture of your granddad?
Well, there isn't. Well, arguably there isn't one, because I wanted to make a sculpture of chain makers to celebrate that there was that they were the hub of that area. That's why there is a community there.
Right.
Like, there's a reason for every community, and it will often be work based. But the commission that I got was actually the massive black column outside Tesco's. Because Tesco's...
in Cradley Heath?
In Cradley Heath.
Oh, no, I didn't realise that was yours.
That's mine as well. So Tesco's levelled half of Cradley Heath, built an aircraft hangar that they sell food in. And I talked to the community and said, what do you want to represent you? And they all said, well, we really miss the buildings. Can you knock us up a chimney? And I was like, well, it's not really what I got into making art for. I could do a chimney. But I built this chimney and then separate it into loads of different sections and work with different members of the community to come up with what they missed. And then those sections of that industrial chimney that's all riveted together represent that. So if you look at it, there's a sort of spider web of images. It was the first thing I ever built, which, again, ill-advisedly, was probably... I almost learned to weld while making that sculpture. But it was a great thing to do. But then there is a sculpture of my granddad in the background of the Lady Chainmaker's monument. There's a sculpture of him hugging my nan as part of the representation of the striking workers. Because the Lady Chainmaker strike was so instrumental, but it was supported by the whole community. So the 5 figures that sit behind it, one of them is my wife, one of them's my nan and granddad. There's my mum's there, my auntie, and also the last chainmakers, the last female chainmaker. She's there, Annette Bradney. She's the wife of Mick Bradney, who taught me, and her daughter Saran. Mick Bradney's sadly no longer with us, but he was a fantastic guy. So there's a lot of very sort of special representation there in itself.
Yeah, that must be so mad to be able to be like, actually, yeah, like that's my own family. But...
yeah, they're not getting another one. That's it now.
Yeah, one's enough.
One's enough, yeah.
Okay, so let's just like turn back the clock for a moment then. You were a student here at BCU at Oxford School of Art back in the early noughties.
Very early noughties, yeah.
So what was it like to be a student in Birmingham back then? I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but it was a very different city then.
Quarter of a century nearly. It was. I mean, I remember the Old Bull Ring as a big concrete thing. Yeah. And it was nice and grotty around here. You know, like I kind of enjoyed the Birmingham where large portions of it smelt of wee. It's just, I suppose there's a joy to unpretentiousness that at that period of history that was kind of the case. Birmingham's still got a wonderful vibe. I love it here. It is a really unpretentious city, and it's so full of so many different sorts of people. But I suppose when I was here, it felt, it was a different vibe. There was a different economical power.
Yeah.
The country seemed inherently optimistic, albeit we were protesting a massive war. So the place was full of anti-war protests as well at the time. So it was a really exciting time to feel like you were part of a big change.
Yeah.
And it was I suppose it was really exciting and frustrating in equal measures, because if you've got a huge amount of I suppose ambition, and you've got loads of belief that you can change the world, which everybody should have, and I certainly did when I was young, and I do a bit now, fair bit now, but I realise that I'm not quite as egotistical as I was. And that was a great time, and I loved the space. Margaret Street's an incredible place to be. The lecturers were wonderfully supportive and judgmental in equal measures, which was great because I needed that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. I still love it here. I think BCU is a special university.
Okay, so in terms of let's go back to public art then.
Mm-hmm.
So can you, I guess, almost like explain the process to me then? Like, do towns and communities reach out to you, or do you go to certain areas and you get inspired and you think, I want to do some work here?
It's a real mix. There's honestly no commissions that have come the same way. It used to be the case that there would be a commission and you could apply for it because councils funded that sort of thing. That's not really the case anymore. So I could go kind of example base wise. So the Lines of the Great War sculpture that's outside the Gurdwara in Smethwick, what happened there was me and my wife were going around the battlefields in Ypres and Flanders, and we just said, well, there's so many names here, from all over the Commonwealth. And I mean, we were mildly aware at this sort of 2013, 14, that there was some Commonwealth soldiers, but nowhere near the amount. And so I got back, I called up some people that I knew. I got in touch eventually with Preet Gill, the MP for Edgbaston. She put me in touch with the Gurdwara, and we developed a project. And then they raised some funding, and Sandwell Council kind of said you could have a certain portion of land, and we built this project from scratch based on the fact that, I mean, it was just a little thought that we had, but then I talked to the Gurdwara and they said, yeah, we've been waiting 100 years for this.
Yeah.
And there are communities all over the UK that are screaming out for representation, and as soon as you just tap that a little bit, it's like you put a pin into like a waterbed. It just comes psst, it just comes right out, and everyone's like, yes, oh my god, you need to do this and this and this, and you need to represent this, and have you thought about this, have you seen this film, have you talked to these people, because there's such a dearth of representation for women, minority communities, any name a community that isn't a white wealthy man, and they have not been represented. And that's why public art is so necessary, because you can't be what you can't see. And if you're a little kid growing up and you are not part of what would be considered like the mainstream culture, you feel different. You're not going to feel like it's okay to be you unless you see things that make it feel like when you are the person you want to become, that person is important. And so by putting sculptures out there that give people a voice, it's not even giving them a voice, they've got a voice, it's just showing that voice, then it makes people feel like being them is valid and important and exciting, and that there's sort of more out there to go at, and as soon as you do, like the Lines of the Great War sculpture, when we did that, it felt like it was almost the first of its kind in the UK, and it very much was in certain regards, but then all of a sudden, I think it was part of a movement of frustrated people who then went, right, we want one of these, and I love feeling like we're part of a little incendiary group lighting fires that then people get really oh, well, we need this and this and this, and that's great. And it's happening all over the UK in all sorts of different mediums. It's not just public art or literature or film, it's everything, and it's it's necessary and it's unstoppable, really.
Can you tell me a bit about the projects that you're either currently working on or your kind of like most recent ones?
I suppose the most recent two sculptures that I've unveiled, one is the Black British History is British History piece, which is in Winson Green on the canal there. I've been working with a fantastic charity called Legacy West Midlands, and they put me in touch with the black community in the area, and also I've mentored a BCU student called Kane Brown, who's just won a load of awards because he's amazing. And we looked at making a piece about black history that wasn't what most artwork about black history is, which seems to be either the history of victimisation or in some cases even more negative, like crime and things. So Kane and a load of the people I work with wanted to look at the successes of black history, which is the majority of black history in this country. Almost all of it is massive amounts of success. And so we looked at everything from the Aurelian Moors back in 2,000 years ago. There's been a black community in this country for 2,000 years, and that's if you don't discount that Cheddar Man was black. The first recorded Britain would have been black. But so they're looking at this huge history of success, going through the Georgian period, all the way through to now, and then that's represented at the future where there's a kid sitting on the Smethwick Marshall Street sign, and he's got his fist in the air. So that's something really cool we've just unveiled. We unveiled also the ribbons piece, which was I worked with a wonderful artist called Gary Jones, and that's to give representation to AIDS and HIV, and it's just this brilliant, beautiful pair of intertwined ribbons that become hearts. It's a simple piece of design, but it's a really difficult thing to make. But it sits there at the start of the gay village where I kind of spent a load of my youth. I kind of almost grew up there, and it's this symbol of kind of positivity. Yeah. And it's taken this thing that during the sort of Thatcher reign was this death sentence, and you weren't allowed to talk about being gay. It was illegal to discuss being gay in an educational setting, and to the point where my kids, where they hear the word AIDS, they're like, "Yay, Gary! Are we going to see Gary?" Like it's this positive thing. Literally, it's a positive thing, and it's changed a lot of attitudes, and it's getting rid of the stigma, because people die because they don't talk about it. So it's a thing to talk about, and I just feel so privileged to be part of both of those sculptures, because it's this ability to just be part of a cog, making things that make the world happier for people and less ignorant. But the other piece that's in the fabrication at the moment, I'm welding up, just finished working on it, is a sculpture called The Strength of the Hijab, and I'm working with a community, the CCF over in Smethwick, and we've designed a piece about representing women who wear hijabs, and just how it's a really proud piece, and we think that's possibly the first sculpture of a woman in a hijab in the world, because they're a very underrepresented group of people. But this is a piece that the little kids, I mean, God, Malala lives in Birmingham. How proud should we be of people who wear a hijab? Malala lives in this town. So it's an amazing thing to be part of a community that have got this incredible heritage, and there's no representation. So we've made this sort of nearly 6 metre sculpture, which we're going to install, that is just a piece of representation that makes people feel important, and that's going to be the next thing to install.
Okay, so can you give me some examples then of pieces that have had like a real significant impact on an area or community, and I guess also some of the kind of like untold stories that you've been able to tell through the public art in those communities?
Well, I think certainly when I worked on the SS Journey piece, which is in Handsworth, so that was a piece which was it's a sculpture about essentially celebrating immigration. So how brave you have to be to leave one part of the world where you call home, move to a different bit of the world where you might not speak the same language, you certainly are not familiar with, and set up a life there. And Handsworth is a sort of go-to point for a lot of people that are moving to this country, and then they might settle there for a bit and go elsewhere. But it's a wonderful place for that. That's why it's so incredibly colourful and brilliant. But it's in the park there, and it's of the front of a ship. So this is, I think we did it in about 2016 maybe.
Right.
And it was referencing the Windrush before people started talking about the Windrush, really. And there's a sculpture of a guy who's quite famous in Handsworth there, called Hector Pinkney, and he's sitting standing on the front of this boat in a sort of 1960s outfit with a big flat cap, and it's just this piece which celebrates how brave you have to be to make a life like that. And I know a lot of people in Handsworth. I kind of spent a lot of time there when I was a kid, and their family kind of go like, oh yeah, we all love the sculpture of Hector, yeah. And it's made people feel. I know that a lot of the feedback I've got is that it's made people feel like it's a safe place for them to be. And I think certainly I'm so proud of the ribbon sculpture, because not only is it about this thing that is nothing to be ashamed of, so it's talking about AIDS and HIV, but also it's about love, and it's becoming used as a like a community centre for the queer community. When there was the young trans girl killed, her memorial was there, and there was hundreds of people around it holding candles around this sculpture that me and Gary made. And to be part of something that people can use for good, that's incredible. And I, no matter how much it hurts to make these things, and it really does, and it's just worth it. It's great. It's really vindicating to make things that people use as part of the good fight, I suppose. Okay,
so, I mean, obviously you've got so many pieces.
I have now, yeah, I'm getting really old.
But what are your absolute, favourites? Have you got any that you're like, oh, God, that was really good?
It's difficult. It's a really difficult thing to put your finger on. I think the Lines of the Great War piece in Smethwick, that felt like, at the time, it was in The Guardian as the first anti-Brexit piece. That's what it was called.
Right.
And I was very proud of that, because my politics are not hidden at all. And I feel also the Lady Chainmaker's piece, which nearly bankrupted me, was so worth it, because that's so close to my heart.
Yeah.
The piece about the Battle of Saragari. So one of the things I was really proud of is the piece in Wensfield, which is of a Sikh soldier, celebrates the Battle of Saragari, which is where the British Empire, which is where it was being the British Empire, it was dividing people and being where it shouldn't have been at the time. It had an outpost where they had 21 Sikhs and one Muslim chef that held off against, I think, 14,000 Afghan tribesmen. And it's a huge, huge part of the Sikh identity. You say Saragari to a practicing Sikh, and they would most likely know what it is. And I was asked to make this sculpture, and I do really feel like it's a very good sculpture as well. Like, I'm getting to the point where I'm not ashamed to say that I feel like some of the things I make are good. I don't know why.
You definitely shouldn't be ashamed to say that.
I know, but it's like, I don't know, it's a guilt thing. Maybe when I was growing up, you don't say that you're good at things.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a Black Country thing. I think you don't talk yourself up, really.
No.
But I feel like that's a good sculpture. I feel like I would look at that and go, oh, they've spent time on that. I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of being part of that. I'm proud of how the Gurdwara celebrated the one Muslim chef, because that was a cancelled part of history. No one talked about the one Muslim guy, because the British at the time played the narrative 21 Sikhs beat 14,000 Muslims. They were trying to divide people, and it didn't fit the narrative that there was a Muslim chef that laid his life down taking up arms as part of the British Raj. But we found out about that in a history book, and the Gurdwara was so big on trying to make reparations that they dedicated a whole side of the plinth to that guy, Kampakuda Dad. And that, so again, we're like moving mountains culturally, doing that, really. So that, I'm really proud of that too. And I'm very proud of the hijab piece that we've just made. I say we. There was a whole community of people getting involved in it. I can't name them all, but yeah, Legacy West Midlands and Carmi Baines, who's been driving it forward, incredible. We's not a big enough word.
Okay, so this is something we like to do in every episode. Mm-hmm. A Birmingham quickfire round.
Okay.
Where is your favourite spot in Birmingham?
My favourite spot in Birmingham is, I think, it's the gay village. Yeah, I love it there. And also, I spent a bit of time working at the Glee Club, quite a bit of time working at the Glee Club, and I met my wife there. We both spent time in the gay village because we're both out by people, and yeah, it's just brilliant. I feel safe there. I feel like I love being there. So yeah, that's it. Gay village.
Snobs or Pop World?
Snobs.
Really, not a cheesy music kind of guy?
If everywhere else was shut, I would have gone. And I'm talking the old Snobs. I haven't even been in the new Snobs.
Oh wow, that is pretty savage. Blues or Villa?
Blues, because it's a type of music. I'm assuming you're talking about football, which I know is very popular in England. Sorry.
Yeah, it's football.
Yeah, okay, football, yeah. Blues or Villa, I don't know. Well, I suppose because I'm kind of friends with Benjamin Zephaniah, and he sort of slept on Aston Hall for a while. It's probably, I could have affiliations to Villa.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have to get Villa, really.
I would do. He'd be upset with me otherwise.
Broad Street or Digbeth?
Digbeth.
Where is your favourite Brummie landmark?
I feel like landmarks wise, it's the people that make Birmingham. So from the minarets to the Gurdwaras to the tattoo parlours and the music venues, and the people sitting on steps just having a chat, and the fact that there's a place for everybody, it is the people that make the landmark of Birmingham. That would be it for me.
And what is your favourite Brummie slang word?
Well, it's hard because a lot of them have been stolen from the Black Country, of course, which is
I would have to agree.
Where it really came from, because that's the old English. But I would probably have to say ER, because allegedly that was my first word. Because because when they give me a bottle, they'd go ER. So I would just hold my hands up and go ER, ER.
So you've been selected as one of our local heroes at this year's Alumni Festival. So what does that mean?
Must be a very small radius, that locality.
No, you are definitely a local hero, Luke.
Thanks.
So what does that mean to you?
It's really lovely. I don't accept praise very well. So being nominated as a local hero, I suppose what that must mean, which is useful to me, is that you guys appreciate the values of what I'm trying to be part of. And what I feel like, if I'm trying to be part of anything, it's a movement to make sure that there's room for everyone in this country, that we keep moving forward, that we keep including people, and that we don't identify ourselves by who we're excluding as opposed to who we're including. So it's always nice to feel like you've got allies. Yeah. And if I'm a local hero, then it means that I've got friends, which is brilliant. Thank you.
And final question then, if you could go back to your very first day at BC School of Art, what year was that?
I remember about 2001, 2000, yeah.
What is the one piece of advice you would give yourself?
One piece of advice. It's difficult because this question if I wouldn't want to do anything that changed my life,
Yeah.
because if I ever didn't meet my wife, that would be the worst crime I could do against myself. But if there was someone in a similar situation, for example, rather than just me, I would say stick to your guns. Like, just keep working. Absolutely nail your colours to the mast. Do not think that because there isn't something that you can see, that there isn't something out there. I couldn't see that there was my job, but I worked out there must have been someone who was making public monuments.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a lot of things now that I wasn't then, and that's got to do with I suppose the bravery of taking a few chances, and surrounding yourself by positive people who make you feel like you can be yourself. So yeah, I suppose a bit of advice really would be surround yourself by people who make you feel like being you is okay, and then use their love, use that energy to just keep going at your dreams.
Luke, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast today. It's honestly been so great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll talk to you again very soon.
Absolutely. See you in a bit.